Hey guys, it's your boy, Ballface8020, back again with another great commentary. um, One of my viewers has made a compilation video of me straightening my hair out. It's pretty funny. I don't know. I'll see if I can link them in the. I'll make like a pinned comment where I can link it, or I'll put it in the video description or something. Um, so yeah, I got a comment from a video I made a while back. Uh, this morning. A video was called something about dealing with uh, feelings of inferiority from being unattractive, and it's actually one of my more popular videos. It has a really high number of upvotes and a good amount of views, which is I'm being honest is a big part of the reason I'm not taking it down. Sheer vanity. And the thing is, it's not like I think it's like the world's worst video or anything, but I wouldn't have made the same video today. Um, because basically the comment today that I got was a short, succinct comment. Accusing, basically just saying I was trying to intellectualize my way out of it, out of what I was talking about. Feelings of inferiority and stuff. So you can't intellectualizing your way out of it is just denying reality. And in so many words, it's a type of cope. And the thing is, he's right. He's right. When I made the video, not really sure exactly where I was mentally at the time, but it was cope, if I'm being honest. The It wasn't cope as in, I mean, I absolutely believed what I was saying intellectually, but it wasn't how I really saw stuff. So, some of this video, if you've been following me for the last year or 2 years, there is going to be some redundancy, but I'm going to try to provide at least some new insight into it. So last year, a little bit like year before last year, last 2 years, maybe you'd say, went through some stuff with depression and just sort of existential despair, and those two things were related. Now, I've pretty much my entire life have had issues with self confidence and stuff like that, and that got me really interested in things like Buddhism or Stoicism, things that like to develop self confidence. And that was probably the main reason that I got as into Buddhism as I did. And so that's something. Yeah, Stoicism not quite as much, partially because Stoicism gets a bad name because it's so associated with the Casey Zanders and Kevin Ray Wilders of the world. I mean, you've got these people who just completely misunderstand it, and then use stoicism in an unstoic way, and it's just really counterproductive, even for the goals they're trying to achieve. So I was actually more into Buddhism. um the so For me though, it took me it was Buddhism is not really, especially if you come from like a Western materialist background. Buddhism is not easy to grasp, especially like me. My IQ is only 115, so it's hard for me to understand this stuff anyway. But the if you read something enough and you think about it enough, a 115 IQ is enough to like for it to start to sink in eventually. Um, for me, I never really had the self discipline to do like heavy amounts of meditation or heavy amounts of sense restraint. And when I talk about sense restraint, I mean like just avoiding entertainment. The main thing is avoiding entertainment, avoiding keeping your mind occupied, doing a lot of just you eat, you work, you sleep, and that's it. So in all the downtime, you're just there. Just sitting, you're staring at the wall, you're pacing in your room, but you're not doing anything. And there may be something to be said for that in certain cases, but I've never had the self discipline to sustain it over any period of time. Um, what I did have though last year was depression. So the in what was it? Was that more 20? Yeah, that was more of a 2021 thing, as due to the a bad reaction to ironically, to a depression treatment I was getting called transcranial magnetic stimulation, which I got to help deal with my fatigue. But coming off it, caused a horrible depressive relapse. And it probably took me like a year to fully recover from it. I'm not saying you shouldn't get transcranial magnetic stimulation, but go to somebody who knows what they're doing, not just, like one of those pill mills that I went to. Because I ended up going to like a real professional afterwards, and they got me back on the right track. So anyway, for me though, it was a mixture of like, so spending like I'd been spending years really, not maybe not years, but months having read a lot about the theoretical side of Buddhism, thinking about it a lot. But then so I never didn't have the discipline to do the sense restraint stuff. So it's like the universe did it for me by putting me into that deep depression. And I think that's really what, was enough to kind of put me over. And when I say put me over is, and I had talked about it, I think even in that video that made me make this video, the inferiority videos, that there's a difference between intellectualizing, saying like, okay, yeah, you're not your physical form, and there's a difference between intellectualizing it and actually seeing it. Because if you're intellectualizing it, if you're saying it like that's really what you believe, but you're not actually seeing it, that's cope. That's complete cope. If it's something that you have to think about, then you're coping. It may be cope that you genuinely believe, but it's cope nonetheless. And it's a totally different world than actually seeing it. I can tell you as somebody who has actually seen it. And so we'll step back a second and talk about this concept of non-self in Buddhism. So on the surface, the idea of non-self or no self seems nonsensical. Like basically it says, this non-self says that you don't actually exist. It's like, well, how could I not exist? I'm talking to you right now, right? Like, if I don't exist, what is, what's talking? What's talking? What's hearing? What's seeing? And so, I mean, on the surface level, it's pretty stupid and pretty nihilistic. But basically, what it means is it's not even a theory. It's just a recognition of just like imagine a bicycle. What we think of as a bicycle is just a collection of parts, like wheels, screws, and stuff like that. None of those things in and of themselves could be called like the bicycle. I mean, the bike frame maybe, but even that would just be the bike frame, not an entire bicycle. So similarly, in Buddhism would say that the person is a collection of parts, or the self is a collection of parts, and those parts would be, there's the 5 aggregates. I know I've bungled this before, but I think I got them now because I looked it up before this. Physical form. So that's not just, that's, your body and your brain, I guess, technically, but really, I think physical form is probably the best way to look at it. So that's one of the aggregates. 2 is your sensations, like the things you feel. So that would be, tastes, whatever, taste, sounds, hearings, whatever. 3 is perceptions. And perceptions is a little bit different than the actual sensation, because a perception involves like an interpretive aspect. Like, for instance, if a sensation would be, seeing the light molecules or whatever, that if you're looking at a chair and seeing the light molecules or whatever, the perception would be you're seeing that and interpreting it as a chair. That's the perception. So, and then the next is mental volition. Basically, that just means any willful act, anything you do, say, or deliberately think or dwell on. And then the 5th is just consciousness, what's actually doing the perceiving and feeling or whatever, or what actually is perceiving and feeling. The idea in Buddhism would be that you take away any 1, any 2, any 3 of those aggregates. There's none of those things that you can actually break down and say, that is you, that is yourself. When you really do think about it. To me, the exception, even now, even after all this, would be consciousness. I still have a very hard time not saying that I am my consciousness. The I would say that that's the one thing that's all. If I look back through my life, what's the one constant that's always been there? Is the consciousness. However, I guess the Buddhist reaction or response to that would be, and I'll be honest, I've never heard a great one, but I think what they would probably say is, well, imagine yourself in a really deep sleep or a really deep coma. When you're in a really deep sleep with no consciousness, do you stop existing? And you'd probably say no. You'd probably say, no, I still exist because your consciousness isn't there. If you're in deep sleep or if you're put under anesthesia, your consciousness is gone, but your physical form is still there. So do you still exist? And the um, it's just I mean, I get, I don't even know how it's. I mean, if the body was dead, I would say then you could say no, you don't exist anymore. But as long as the body's actually still alive, like you wouldn't say that somebody in a coma doesn't exist, right? You wouldn't actually, even if they were in a deep coma and you knew for sure they couldn't see or hear anything, you wouldn't think of them as not existing. I mean, maybe technically, if you intellectualized it, you would, but in practice, you wouldn't. Um, so Yeah. So anyway, for me, again, I don't know exactly how it happened, and I haven't been able to sustain it, and I haven't wanted to. There was a time, I think it was last summer, so I think it would have been about a year ago, that through a mixture of contemplation and just very deep depression, I actually did achieve this kind of, um, I don't know if you want to call it state or experience of no self, where there was no intellectualization. I just simply no longer could identify my aggregates as me. I would look into the mirror and I didn't feel like that I was looking at myself. I was seeing some stranger, and it was a completely unmystical experience. It was nothing mystical, which is what I kind of had expected it would be. I was expecting like some kind of mystical realization with an out of body experience or something. No, no, nothing like that. It was like I look in the mirror and it was somebody else. It almost wasn't even somebody else. It was just like it wasn't me. I just felt no identification with it. The only thing I could think to compare it to is, you have your hair and you identify that as part of you, and then when you're going to get your hair cut and you see it on the floor, you see the haircut on the floor, and it's like it's just you don't identify with it anymore. It's just dead hair that's gone. It's got nothing to do with you. And that's how I felt like looking at myself in the mirror. And I just didn't feel like, and I remember feeling like this was the first time in my life, the only time in my life, that somebody could have, and I'm good about not being too sensitive to insults and not getting like too gassed up by praise, especially if somebody's insulting me about something I don't care about, or if they're praising me about something I don't care about. Um, or yeah, something like that. Um, but there's a difference between not making it a big deal and just not caring at all. Like I really like somebody could have said anybody thing that people could have said like the entire world could have said Baldface 8020, you are the most brilliant, best looking person to ever exist. And I wouldn't have like felt flattered because I would have felt like they were talking about somebody else. I would be like, "What are you talking about? What do you mean I'm good looking? Do you mean this physical form is attractive? I don't give a shit. I don't. That's not me. It's not me. Who the hell are you talking about? Why are you telling me? Go tell him." And that's seriously how it felt. And it extended beyond just myself. I didn't just view myself this way or not this way. I started seeing everybody this way. It was like nobody was really there, which like it just turned everything with, what we think about, uh, society just kind of on its head because I saw like just how status conscious we all are, even if we don't think about it. We all just are like subconsciously evaluate where people fit in this social structure. Like you're always consciously saying like this person is better or worse than this person or better than worse than me. You don't know you're doing it, but you are. I mean, I didn't know I was doing it until I saw it, and everybody just seemed exactly the same because there was nobody really there. You'd see somebody and it would be like oh, there's a physical form, but that's not that person. That's like I'm seeing a physical form, but that person is that's just a collection of attributes, has nothing to do with them. And I remember hearing a Buddhist say that Buddhist monks say that like it didn't make any sense to be jealous of somebody for being better looking than you, because the their form was just as much, it was no more about them than it was about you. It's just as much yours as them, and your form is just as much them as you. And I remember thinking like, okay, yeah, I don't think so. But that's really what it felt like. I'm serious. And you just kind of have to see it for yourself if you want to. And so it was this weird combination of, on one hand, like total liberation, like like you didn't have to worry about, I didn't have to worry about anything. It was just like, a whole life of dealing with insecurities. I had none, like all of a sudden. But at the same time, it was like really unpleasant because it was replaced with nothing, because that's been my entire life. That's been all of our entire life. That's just how we relate to the world and how we relate to ourselves. So it's like, yeah, you don't feel inferior, but you stopped, but the price was you stopped even like having anything solid to hold on to at all. You stopped feeling like you even existed. You didn't, the only reason you didn't feel inferior, I didn't stop feeling inferior because I felt better about myself. I stopped feeling inferior because I felt like I didn't really exist. Again, except for the exception would be the consciousness thing. I never stopped thinking that the consciousness wasn't me. I always felt like that was. I even kind of felt like I didn't identify with my physical form at all, and I got better about not identifying with sensations. But I also kind of knew that it was like, well, if you like set me on fire or something, I would start identifying with that those sensations pretty quickly, involuntarily, but nonetheless. Um, and thoughts, I kind of the thoughts I kind of still had to intellectualize a bit to like to know that like, oh, the thoughts and forms and stuff, those aren't me. Um, that was kind of mixed. It was mainly the thing I stopped identifying with was the physical form, but that's a lot of how that's how we interact with the world. So it ended up being a big deal. Um, so yeah, I mean, basically, so that, I mean, it probably wouldn't have been so bad if I wasn't also suffering from like horrendous depression at the time, and it made it a lot worse. And the thing is, like, I wasn't like in a meditation retreat or anything. I wasn't practicing virtue or sense restraint. So because of that, I didn't really maintain it that strongly. I would kind of go into it, like in and out of it, and I would have these experiences at times. It would always kind of be there. Even now, it's still there a little bit. But like, as the depression got better, and I was able to just kind of, it just kind of wore off. So like I said, even now it's there a little bit, but it's not like, but it's kind of not, it doesn't really bother me that much. The thing is, it's kind of like, if anything, it's kind of a benefit at this point. But I certainly don't feel that way now. I certainly like don't like look in the mirror and think like that's not me or anything like that. In fact, I very strongly identify with my aggregates, including my physical form. Um, and I don't want to go back to not doing it because it was really unpleasant. So I mean, I think the you know so I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, I certainly wouldn't recommend it for anybody. Like, again, like, I don't know what it would have been like if I had had the same experience without the severe depression. Maybe it wouldn't have been as bad. Maybe it even would have been pleasant. And again, it was really, it was liberating, but just, you know I guess I prefer non-liberation. The thing is, it's like, yeah, okay, you're seeing reality and you're free. It's like, okay, but I think I was happier living in delusion and not being free. I mean, it really was like choosing to have the blue pill and get plugged back into the matrix. That's I mean, that's kind of, I kind of just fell into it myself by, like, again, not exercising virtue, not exercising sense restraint. But the truth is, it's not going to be a productive way to interact with the world. I mean, you're never going to be able to do anything if you just feel like you don't really exist and neither does anybody else. Because everything's going to be kind of like, yeah, it doesn't really matter. And, maybe in one sense it really doesn't. But I think that, you know, yeah, you can recognize that that's really how it is, but I'm not sure if it's how people are meant to think. I think that yeah, yeah, you can understand it. Like reality, there's less to reality than we think or than we conventionally think, but we're like supposed to treat reality like it's real. That's the best. That's the best I can make of it. Or maybe it is real in its own way. This reality. It's not that reality isn't real or what we see as reality isn't real. It's just a different expression of reality. And that's the expression of reality we were meant to live in, not some like kind of underneath the surface, nothing really exists thing. Like, leave that to the mystics. And normal people though aren't meant for that. That's what I think. So just focus on this reality, and I think you'll be a lot better off. I know that I at least feel a lot better. Um, maybe it is good for like to at least see it to give you kind of a reality check. Like I think that is kind of what it did for me. It kind of is like, you know, sort of a forced humility and a forced rationalization because you're always going to know you just kind of know like, well, that's how things are. Not to take things fully at face value. Um, a little bit of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, maybe 1 3/4 foot in and a 1/4 foot out. Maybe that's the best way to do it. Um, so yeah, that's all for now, and I'll see you in the next.